In Brazil, President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva signed on Friday a decree limiting access to arms and ammunition for civilians, preserving a policy implemented by his predecessors, Jair Bolsonaro. The Democratic Republic of the Congo rushes to finish infrastructure ahead of the francophone games that will take place from July the 28th to August the 6th. The last edition took place in Ivory Coast in 2017. Hundreds of Israeli demonstrators continue their march for Tel Aviv to Jerusalem on Friday against Premier Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to reform the judiciary in the country. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll begin with the news. Stay with us. In Brazil, President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva signed on Friday a decree limiting access to arms and ammunition for civilians, preserving a policy implemented by his predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro. The measure was signed by the president during a ceremony at the Planalto Presidential Palace as a part of a security action program presented together with his Minister of Security, Flavio Dino, which included other measures and proposals to try to reduce violence in Brazil. The decree on the responsible control of weapons reduced from 4 to 2 the number of weapons and ammunition for persons' defense purpose and requires the demonstration of a real need to acquire them, among other points.
It is one thing for a citizen to have a gun at home for protection, for security, because some people think that having a gun at home gives them security. But we cannot allow there to be arsenals of weapons in people's hands. We will continue to fight for fewer weapons in our country. Only the police and the army must be well armed. What we need to lower is the price of books and the price of cultural activities that our children don't have access to.
In Peru, citizens mobilized to demand the release and restitution of former President Pedro Castillo. After a protest outside Barbadillo prison, where the former President Castillo is being held, lawyers stated that they feel a habeas corpus suit due to different human rights violations committed against the former head of state. They affirm that Castillo is the victim of abusive and unjustified sanctions, which caused the suspension of visits and interviews with his defense attorney. In this context, they indicate that they are even denying medical attention to Pedro Castillo, especially the attention of his otorhinolaryngologist due to the hearing disability. On Friday, the Cuban parliament debates the implementation of the food sovereignty law, which aims to improve production processes throughout the country. On the second day of the first ordinary period of sessions, regulations that aims to improve the processes of production, transformations, commercialization, and consumption of food based on the endogenous capacities of each territory was evaluated. The legislators have emphasized that the law is of utmost importance for the country since it refers to a fundamental issue such as food.
From the first years of the revolution, we have passed laws and programs to guarantee the food for our people. Now the focus is on what we have to do to fulfill each of these programs. We have also approved the guidelines of the economic and social policy of the Party of the Revolution, which also outlines concrete objectives. We have the economic strategy until 2030. We approved 63 measures to dynamize and remove obstacles in the agricultural sector. And recently, we presented to the Political Bureau a group of actions with certain incentives to attend in a differentiated manner by the Central State Administration Agency, the provincial and municipal governments, the agricultural communities, and the Turquino Plan.
In addition, Jorge Luis Taipa detailed that there are several factors that influence the responsibility for compliance with the food law.
There are 16 agencies of the Central State Administration that have specific responsibilities in the implementation of the law. If we don't see beyond the Ministry of Agriculture and local governments, we do not understand the concept of the law. Each of them, from training, education, eating habits, food quality, are important for the future. Several colleagues will have to see how they are complying with these guidelines approved by the law.
On Friday, President Joe Biden's go to U.S. tech giants to pledge war drills against risks from artificial intelligence ranging from cyber attack to fraud. Biden met at the White House with top representatives from Amazon, Anthropic, Google, Inflection, Meta, Microsoft, and OpenAI. Biden has put his stamp at the issue, making it clear that they recognizes the promise and peril of an industry in which U.S. companies are at the forefront of innovation. Prior to the meeting, the seven AI giants committed to a set of self-regulatory safeguards that, according to the White House, will underscore three principles that must be fundamental to the future of the artificial intelligence: safety, security, and trust.
Clear-eyed and vigilant about the threats of emerging technologies that can pose, don't have to, but can pose to our democracy and our values. Americans are seeing how advanced artificial intelligence and the pace of innovation have the power to disrupt jobs and industries. These commitments are a promising step, but we have a lot more work to do together. We'll see more technology change in the next 10 years, or even in the next few years, than we've seen in the last 50 years. That has been an astounding revelation to me, quite frankly. Artificial intelligence is going to transform the lives of people around the world.
In Guatemala, the Fuego volcano erupted with significant lava flows. The areas that will be affected are located in the west of the country. According to the National Institute of Seismology and Volcanology of Guatemala, the volcano recorded 5 to 11 weeks of moderate explosions per hour, generating gas and ash plumes from 4,500 to 4,800 meters above sea level. The seismic station continued to register wave explosion, which generates avalanches from the top of the dome in all directions. The U.S. National Aeronautics and Space Administration warned that July might be the warmest month ever recorded. According to the monitoring tool from the European Union and the U.S. University of Maine, which combine ground and satellite data, several daily temperature records have already been broken this month. NISAD climatologist Gavin Smith indicated that these effects can not only be attributed to the El Niño phenomenon, a current climate event linked to the warming of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, which has just begun. Let's take a short break, but remember you can now follow us on TikTok account as teleSUR English. There you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. Friday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that the whole world is watching Western military equipment burn, and that is even inferior in some aspects to Soviet equipment. At a meeting with the permanent members of the Council, the President indicated that although Western teams do some damage to Russia and prolong the conflict, NATO's reserves are significantly depleted. According to Putin, the controllers of the Kiev regime are clearly disappointed with the results of the so-called control offensive. On the other hand, he stressed that the command of the Russian armed forces had rested professionally and the Russian soldiers performed duty to the motherland in a congruous, firm and historic manner.
The whole world sees that the much vaunted, supposedly invulnerable Western equipment is burning, and in terms of its tactical and technical data, it is often even inferior to some of the Soviet-made weapons. Western weapons can be additionally supplied and thrown into the fight. This, of course, causes us some damage and prolongs the conflict. But first and foremost, NATO arsenals and stockpiles of old Soviet weapons in some European states are already largely depleted.
And also on Friday, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Vershinin said that the Russian Navy will inspect incoming vessels in the areas of the Black Sea to make sure that they are not carrying military cargo.
All vessels heading to the Black Sea waters to Ukrainian ports will be regarded as potential carriers of military cargo, and the countries whose flags are on these vessels will be considered involved in the conflict on the side of the Kiev regime, will be regarded and considered. It means we will need to make sure that the vessel is carrying something improper. It would imply the demand and the check, if necessary, to make sure if it is indeed the case.
The Deputy Foreign Minister also made reference to the recently expired grain deal, saying Russia is ready to evaluate options to continue grain shipments, but export its demands to be met. Vershinin added that Russia will work to fulfill the needs of African countries.
Now no contest on the alternative to the grain deal because we have clearly articulated and expressed our position. Let's have first the results of the discussion we had this year, as we receive promise instead. We need results, not promise. Then we can restore joint efforts to supply grain to the world market.
On Friday, the Russian Foreign Ministry announced that the BRICS summit will discuss the prospect of creating a new currency for members countries of the group. The statement explained that the development of firm payment and collections mechanisms which will support the mutual trade between the member countries is one of the key ways in the cooperation of the BRIC countries. The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs recalled that more and more countries are thinking of increasing the role of alternative currency to the dollar in payments. The Foreign Ministry points out that it is no longer possible to fully rely on the Western financial mechanism since Washington uses the dominant status of its national currency as a tool of political blackmail and punishment. Let's take our last break, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you will be able to watch on interviews, top stories, special broadcasts, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. On financial break, don't go away. Welcome back. The Democratic Republic of the Congo rushes to finish infrastructure ahead of the francophone games that will take place from July the 28th to August the 6th. The last edition took place in Ivory Coast in 2017. On July the 20th, a delegation led by the Congolese Minister of Support of Foreign Affairs and Communications visited Kinshasa side in the presence of ambassadors from French-speaking countries. 3,000 athletes from some 30 French-speaking countries will participate in the Games. Even though the event was initially scheduled for 2021, the pandemic changed the plans. Then in 2022, it was postponed again because the DRC did not have adequate infrastructure to host the event's participants. The so-called Jeux de la Francophonie combine sporting and cultural disciplines.
You must recall here that some sites were delayed. We were at the Stadium of the Martyrs. We read it, for example, all the tartans, which was at the request of the Walloon Federation, I think, and the French Federation of Cycling, because it was a question of adapting the conditions of participation in this competition to the modern conditions of what is done elsewhere, and we made an effort to meet international standards. So at this point, the essential is done. We are waiting for the games, and for the rest, we will be rather happy for our various young people who can participate in sports competition or prepare for major competitions in modern conditions. And the DRC will be happy to receive competitions for all disciplines involved in the Francophone Games.
In Pakistan, 112 people died as a result of floods caused by heavy rains. The National Disaster Management Authority said that half of the deaths were recorded in the province of Munjab. The number of injured increased to 185, while more than 150 houses have been affected by floods and landslides. Meteorological authorities forecast that the weather conditions will continue during the weekend, which will hamper recovery efforts. Hundreds of Israeli demonstrators continued their march from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem on Friday against Premier Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to reform the judiciary in the country. The protesters, on their third day of a 70-kilometer journey, plan to arrive in Jerusalem Saturday night and camp out in front of the Israeli parliament before a key piece of reform is put to a final vote. The judicial reform pushed by Netanyahu's nationalist and religious government has deeply divided Israel, plummeting into one of the worst internal crises and even arousing the concern of its most important ally, the U.S. Protesters in Iran and other Muslim nations rallied on Friday to express their outrage at the discreditation of the copy of the Quran in Sweden. Demonstrations came after Swedish police permitted a protest on Thursday in which an Iraqi of Christian origin living in Stockholm threatened to burn a copy of the Quran. In the end, the men kicked and stood on the holy book outside of the Iraqi embassy. He gave a similar treatment to an Israeli flag and photo of the influential Iraqi sheikh and political leader Muqtada al-Dar and of Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. On Friday, thousands of people took to the streets in Lebanon capital to express their outrage of the desecration of the copy of the Quran in Sweden. Protesters gathered at a rally called by Hezbollah, branding copies of the Holy Book and chanting, "With our blood, we protect the Quran." Some burned Swedish flags. Hezbollah leader called on Muslims to demand that their governments expel Sweden's ambassador. The demonstrations came after Sweden's police permitted a protest in which an Iraqi of Christian origin, now self-described atheist, living in Stockholm, kicked up and stood a Quran outside the Iraqi embassy.
The Quran is our constitution, it is our book, and we will not let anyone to humiliate this holy book that we are living for, and we will keep defending this Quran by our eyes, hairs, blood, and our fists.
In this context, Muslim worshippers in Sweden's capital on Friday expressed their dismay at the discreditation of the Quran earlier.
Powerless faced with this situation, you expect politicians, decision makers, and the police to understand this and try to find a solution to it, but that has not happened, unfortunately. To let these extremists or criminals abuse the law and damage peace in society, national security, and the country's image in the world, this is unsustainable. We cannot understand why these lunatics are allowed to run wild.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also use us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.